Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be walking you through this portrait painting that I did using my modified Prima watercolors. It's mostly the Odyssey set, but it's also all the colors that I love from all three of my Prima sets and one lemon yellow from Sennelier. I reviewed this set and I went ahead and started planning a portrait because I was just so in love with all of the browns in the set. So I found this photo from Unsplash and I immediately fell in love with it. I really thought that it would work with the colors in my set that I wanted to use. So the first thing I did after the sketch was put in my masking fluid, and basically this just preserves the color of the paper. So when I'm painting over it with dark paints, the parts where I'm masking will just be left as it is. And the masking fluid that I used is from Holbein. I really could have done better with how I put in that masking fluid, and it will be more apparent later on when I do take it out, but there's a lot to say about this painting. First off, I wanted this whole painting to be more colorful than the reference photo, but I did want to keep the values as they are. In the reference photo, I really love how everything is so dark under the leaves, and yet she still sort of stands out as the main thing that catches your eye. I also love that the leaves are going across this image, and it sort of really creates this interesting shape that frames the portrait. So those two were the main things that I wanted to capture in my painting and sort of bring to light. So I'm gonna first start off with the things that went well. The browns in the Odyssey set were just perfect for portraits, and especially for dark skin, I think. I just really love the purple undertones in Budapest and Jordan. Just makes the skin look like it's glowing, even when you're using it in its darkest value. The darkest color in the shadows I used is actually a mixture of Eternity from my Essence set, and it's a very cool teal. So when I mix it in with the purple, with my purple browns, like the Budapest, it creates this very cool and dark, almost black color, which I think is just perfect for the shadows in this piece. The other browns in the set sort of just fall perfectly with the portrait too. My reddish brown was a great blush color, and it's not too punchy, but it still is a very cool reddish brown, and so it works well with the purples in the set. And then I also have my warm browns like Cusco and especially Maple. I use those for the highlights. So everything was falling into place. I wasn't used to not adjusting the browns in a set this much because they sort of adjust as they are perfect for portraits. They also don't cancel each other out, so they don't gray out a lot. They just mix really well together. And also I love how dark they remained after they dried. Where it did start to go wrong was making everything else in the painting sort of just work with the colors that I have for her. So while I like the portrait as itself, what happened is that the warm highlights that I initially really liked for her cheekbones and for her forehead, they sort of started competing with the very warm colors that I had planned to later put on for the leaves that's hitting her. And this is really important because I really wanted to capture her bone structure, and by using the warm brown for the highlight on her cheek, I sort of made it too similar with the warm yellows of the leaf, and so I lost a lot of that contrast. What I should have done was just use a very cool lavender for the highlights so that I maintain the purple undertones throughout the whole portrait, and so it separates itself from the warm leaves and sort of the foreground. which is the plants that are almost concealing her. What's sad too, I think, is it would have been okay because the sunset is just somewhere behind her, and it wouldn't have been too much of a stretch to have the highlights on this side of her face be a little bit cooler. But when I'm looking at it now, a few days later, it's almost been a week later, it doesn't really seem that bad. It doesn't seem as tragic as I thought it would be. I think I was just kicking myself while I was doing the portrait is because at the time that I was painting, I was constantly looking at the reference photo, so it's hard not to compare my painting to that. And it's also just an incredible photo, so it sort of made the differences more tragic, I think. But now when I'm looking at it as it is, it's not that bad. I actually sort of like it. But also, as I'm editing, I'm not really still looking at the reference photo. I will have the link in the description to the reference photo if you guys want to paint it yourselves. But yeah, now that I'm not comparing both of them, it's not that bad. The background is just a lot of different colors of green. I didn't want those colors to look too similar to the colors that I have on her, so, and also to the leaves that are on the foreground. I didn't want those to look too much like each other, so it looks like there's more depth to the photo. So it's just a mixture of different greens. I think the main goal was to fill in the space that is surrounding the leaves so that when I do take off the masking fluid, the shape of the leaves will stand out more. And I've also put in some silhouettes of the leaves towards the side with the colors of the sunset. I think this is really where I sort of confused myself, because in the reference photo it's almost monochromatic, so you really get to focus on the values. I think I overdid myself with the colors that I was using. Maybe could have been better if I just focused on one hue and just building the full painting off of that, but this is what I came up with. It's been growing on me how colorful it looks, but I know that my brain sort of does this thing where it compensates for what it really is and makes me like the painting more than I initially did while I was painting it. But yeah, I sort of like it now. But I did go really way off of what I initially wanted for the painting when I saw the reference photo. So when it came time to take out the masking fluid was when it came so apparent to me how bad my application was when putting it in. I hate it. I sort of hate watching it because I wasn't careful enough while painting the leaves, and it sort of looks really bad. It just looks really bad, and it's annoying because it's concealing her, and so it's supposed to be almost just as important as her because it cuts through the portrait, and so I had to have it clean. But now that I'm looking at it, it's just awful how I put in that masking fluid. None of those lines are straight, and also I painted over the lines, which is frustrating. I really wish I put in more importance into placing the masking fluid, and I think at the time I was just really excited to paint with the colors that I had, and I overlooked one of the most important parts. But yeah, this is what it looks like after taking off the masking fluid. I knew the only way to save this was to use gouache over it, and I did use gouache quite a lot in this piece. It's a mixture of white and just lemon yellow. I really wanted the colors to be really different from what I used for her, so Because I did use warm yellows for her cheek, I thought that I would at least use a cool yellow for the leaf. And so this is the lemon yellow, and later on I will also be putting in a very cool green, just so I can separate the colors from each other more. What was really fun, and something that I initially thought was going to be the hardest thing to do, was actually put in some of my gouache to build up the values of her face. So I think after I laid down the watercolors, I've made her face not too dark, but sort of one-dimensional. I didn't really put in a lot of contrasting values, so I used my gouache to make the highlights fade into the shadows better, and this part actually went really well. I really liked using the gouache on top of the colors that I already put in, and sort of with her nose was where it required a lot of fixing on my end, because I think I just lost the shape of it while I was doing the watercolors. But yeah, this part wasn't as bad as I initially thought it would be. So because of my awful application of the masking fluid, I had to clean up a lot of the leaves with the gouache. One other thing that I sort of got lost in the planning stage was the color of her earring. Usually when I have jewelry in a portrait, I would actually want the attention drawn to that, and I would sometimes use very dark, very vibrant colors on top of very light values to separate it from the rest of the image. But for this one, I actually wanted her eyes to be the ones to catch the attention. So I didn't really know what to do with the jewelry. At first I put in some metallic silver, and I think it would have worked just as it is, but also on top of the colors not being planned, I also didn't plan the shape too much. So after I painted it with the metallic silver, I didn't know what to do with it, and I just kept on adding different colors to it, hoping that it would eventually start to make sense. I did settle on this very nice sort of teal color, but it's very light and vibrant, and so it's a very cool green, and I'm still undecided whether I like it or not. Usually this is a part where I think it's not as bad as it is, but I actually don't know. I'm very on the fence with the color that I put in for her earring. Okay, so I've talked about everything else, every minor bump in the road while I was painting this, every decision that I wasn't sure about, but now I'm really surprised at something. I'm looking at the video now, and everything else I've said up to this point still stands, but after I colored in her clothes with this very muted sort of grayish brown, I really think that everything fell into place after this. Is this just me going crazy? No, I really don't know if this is my brain telling myself that it went as well as it did, but I really like how everything looks now that I've colored in her dress. Initially I was gonna leave it completely white because that is kind of how it was in the reference photo, but after I've put that in, it sort of brought the leaves in the foreground closer, I think, and cemented her place in the photo. I think now that I've colored that in, and it still looks white, I think it's just affected by the lighting, but I really like how it looks now after I've colored in her clothes, and I did really start liking this piece. It's hard to compare it to the reference photo because that is by itself already amazing, but well, when I'm looking at it right now as a painting, I really do like how it looks right now. So yeah, that is it for this video. My voice is just about to give up, but thank you guys for watching. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me. I have another video that is almost done filming. I just need to do the voiceover for that too. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching, and I will be seeing you guys again soon.